Since 2007, the South African government, with European Union donor funding, has launched the program to support pro-poor policy development, the PSPPD. The program is centered on an approach called evidence-based policy making.
I think it's really funny when one introduces supposedly new concepts, which is this fancy words which is called evidence-based policy making. When in reality, any good policymaker, when we are confronted with any kind of phenomenon, be it social or economic, the first question one has to ask is, what do we know about this problem?
Policymakers make policy. So evidence-based policy making means that the policymakers have systems in place to incorporate the evidence and to evaluate programs, to formulate programs on the basis of what the evidence tells them about how people behave and how people respond to policy. What's the opposite of evidence-based policy making? Is policy making that's a purely political process that's just made in Parliament without reference to what's going on in the society.
Then the next question you have to ask is, so what are the gaps? Are there areas where we need to understand this phenomenon a lot better? What research methodologies should we employ to actually gather this information? And I think that goes for policymakers, it goes for researchers, and it goes for politicians as well.
The PSPPD generates policy-relevant research through collaborating with researchers at universities. The PSPPD encourages the use of data sets such as the National Income Dynamics Study, a project of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation.
NIDS is just a platform to provide evidence and understanding of our contemporary society. It has immense policy relevance. But whether that policy relevance turns into policy is a huge gap, a huge process. But PSPPD is the intermediary between NIDS and its instrument and the policy community to carry forward that dialogue with the policymakers and to put the package together that the impact of NIDS can really feed through to the policymakers.
PSPPD is concerned with pro-poor development. And in order to achieve that successfully, one needs to have research that then informs policy. And the more accurate that research, the better for policy. So NIDS is a vehicle that enables PSPPD to be more effective, in the sense that we are collecting this data, which is panel data, which is richer in terms of the analysis that can be made and allow a wider range of policy questions. Panel survey data is data that looks at the same individuals over various periods of time. So with the NIDS data set, for example, we would have seen individuals for the first time in 2008. And we follow those same individuals through the second wave, the third wave, and now the fourth wave.
The main objective of the PSPPD is to increase the use of research and other evidence in the policy making and implementation process, with the idea that by using good quality evidence, we will improve both our planning and our implementation, and hence through doing that we will achieve the developmental goals of the South African government, which are of course to reduce poverty and inequality.
The PSPPD also generates policy-relevant research through funding academic researchers in several universities in South Africa, such as the University of Fort Hare in the Eastern Cape Province.
The aim of our research is to look at the different strategies that poor households use to manage their livelihoods, and Once we have looked at these, we want to look at the constraints that are associated with actually making those efficient. And we want to match that up with the government's funding priorities so that we can come up with a sustainable list of livelihoods that government can then develop into some form of policy package or intervention package that can help the poor.
What the research is doing is taking this idea of bottom-up development very seriously. We tend to look for technical responses to our various agricultural development challenges. There's also a need to delve quite deeply into these so-called soft issues, learning, communication, implementation systems, and planning. Agriculture is a sector in which the potential for having a positive impact on poverty is enormous, but where I think, quite honestly, we would have to say over the past 20 years, we haven't really performed very well in terms of using agriculture to its potential. So we believe that by doing this kind of research, we can hopefully demonstrate, first of all, the importance of these soft issues, and secondly, point to not exactly specific strategies, but more general thrusts as to how government and small-scale farmers can work more effectively together.
What we do is we bring academics and policymakers closer, and the idea really is, one, to share, of course, the research, for policymakers to engage with this research, but also, very importantly, to build networks and to build relationships. Because the idea is that ultimately what we want intelligent users and we want intelligent providers.
Over the years, the PSPPD has built mutually beneficial partnerships with several research organizations, such as the Children's Institute at the University of Cape Town.
The aim of the Children's Institute is to promote effective policies and interventions that realize the rights of children in South Africa. Over the past year, the Children's Institute have been in a partnership with PSPPD and collaborated on two major projects. The first was the production of the Child Gauge 2014 that had a focus on violence against children, and the second collaboration is around a research project to partner with the PSPPD on a really innovative research project to provide us with an evidence base around programmatic work and what is making a difference in the lives of children in South Africa. The Children's Institute conduct research not just as an academic exercise, and therefore we take it quite seriously to translate our research findings into popular format and into ways that's accessible and usable by both government as well as civil society organizations.
The focus of the work was really in profiling children to ensure their inclusion in the National Development Agenda, and to bring out some of the critical differences between the dynamics of poverty and living conditions that we see for children and adults. And certainly children featured quite strongly in the National Development Plan, which is a guiding document for the vision and the way going forward. That was our contribution to the PSPPD, and I think in turn the relationship with the PSPPD really assisted in getting this information kind of out and into a range of government departments and among policymakers, because that, I think, is part of the main agenda of the PSPPD, is not only to promote and encourage research, and research which makes use of good quality available data sets like NIDS, but also to promote the use of research in policy making. And so it really sits at the intersection of research, evidence, and evidence-based policy making.
We also create a number of platforms for engagement, and this we do through our capacity building and training component, which of course is managed by the learning facility. So on the one hand, we, in terms of capacity building, we're improving the skills, hard analytical technical skills for both researchers and policymakers. It's about better understanding the changing dynamics in South Africa, both social and economic. And again, this isn't a one-way street. It's not just policymakers who have to learn from academics, but also for academics to learn about the policy environment and to understand some of the challenges that policymakers face. And again, I think the same it would be for policymakers to learn about the academic environment.
The PSPPD is an innovative program that builds partnerships between government and academia to increase the use of evidence in policy making and implementation that contributes to South Africa's development goals.
Pro-poor policy development, of course, is a moving target, but it's also a new development. It is not something on which there is a long experience in government. So it is extremely important that policies are well researched, well prepared, and that there is a constant exchange between academics, their insight, and policymakers. And that is exactly why we are so excited about this program. And the fact that we are enabling researchers, civil servants, politicians, CSO and the business community also to talk to each other. We promote, we try to bring these things together. So one of the objectives of the program is to make the policies better by including the results of research.
Our job really is to build capacity within the state, the government departments, around research capacity, not only to use research, but also for government officials, when we commission research, that we're very clear about what the priorities of the government is, and that the research speaks to those priorities. We want policymakers in government to actually use research evidence and use it in a way that actually takes forward the South African government's developmental goals. That ultimately is why we do our work. And as the NDP again states that the three main challenges that face South Africa is, of course, unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And so for us, what this program does is to actually take that agenda forward. And in fact, all of this is really about building a community of very like-minded people that takes very seriously the challenges in our country, and we all make a contribution.